is a threat to places everywhere. It's very unfortunate that some of the terrorist groups operating globally happen to be located right next door to us in our neighborhood. We all know what is the situation in Afghanistan. The United States is leading a group of coalition partners which is engaged in fighting outfits which are entirely committed to terrorism. We have first-hand knowledge of the linkages which exist between groups in Afghanistan and groups located closer to our borders, if I may be more explicit, in Pakistan. We have always been of the view, and this I think has been put across to our US dialogue partners during our discussions, those discussions on the issue of terrorism, that unless the terrorist outfits operating from Pakistan are straightened out, the problem in Afghanistan will not be sorted out. These terrorist groups operating from Afghanistan are using Pakistan as a vantage territory, as a hinterland. There is close nexus. I think there is growing understanding, and more evidence is coming out. This is being actively discussed during our joint working groups on terrorism. I must underline the fact that all of you may have seen a few days ago the WikiLeaks, which mentioned in vivid detail how Pakistan is not being a part of the solution, it is in fact a part of the problem. The British Prime Minister a few days ago, David Cameron, also said that Pakistan is exporting terrorism. So naturally, when we discuss terrorism-related issues with the United States, such issues do figure very prominently in the discussions from our point of view. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you, Excellency.
I'm Arnold Shaheen. Yesterday, we read in the news that China has developed an anti-ship missile that threatens the primacy of U.S. naval power within the sea lanes distant within 1,500 miles of the Chinese coast. Do you see the strategic partnership between India and the United States evolving into a military alliance?
Well, I must say that as a country which is committed to disarmament, not just horizontally but also vertically, we do get alarmed about increasing armament in our area. You perceive it as a threat to your naval presence in the Pacific region and in the Indian Ocean region. We have always viewed with some dismay the growing armament of China, because unlike you, we have faced Chinese aggression in 1962. A large part of our territory was occupied by China and remains occupied. And while we have a peaceful dialogue with China, and China has become one of our major trading partners, we have tried to develop an all-round cooperation with the Chinese, but we do feel sometimes concerned when there is such excessive armament of countries in our region, particularly when such armament tends to find its way into wrong hands. You know, China has been one of the biggest suppliers of weapons to Pakistan. And those weapons naturally are used against us. So while you are concerned about certain aspects relating to the arming of China in a certain direction, we have continued to be very vigilant, and we continue to put under review all such matters, particularly when they have an effect on our own security also. I hope that answers your question, sir. Are there any other questions?
Sir, could you describe for us the relationship, as you perceive it, between India and Iran, and how that relates to what you were proposing in the way of alliance between our countries?
Iran has been India's neighbor since the dawn of history. Before the creation of Pakistan, it was our neighbor, and we have had a history of good cooperation. Of course, there have been ups and downs. There have been times when Iran has waged war against India, when in the days of the Mughal Empire, but subsequently we had a history of close cooperation. They have had some changes in the political regime. We have tried to maintain very cordial relations. There is a strong economic relationship that we have continued to have with them. Of course, your concerns have been placed before our government, and we have always taken decisions in regard to all such issues based on merit. Our evaluation of issues is therefore on a case-by-case basis.
Your Excellency, I'm Martijn Steger. I'm a colleague of Vanita Mehra at Kegler Brown, and I wanted to thank you for your frank remarks today. I take the opportunity, since I don't see anybody standing behind me, of asking two questions, if I may. The first has to do with I believe the Maoist insurgency in India, about which I've been reading recently, is called the Naxalites. And could you talk a little bit about that, and to what extent do you see that insurgency as a threat to India's stability and growth? And then the second question grows out of comments that you emphasized wonderfully early on in your talk about India's economy. And from my perspective, one of the great things about India's economic policies in the last few decades has been that its growth has lifted millions of people out of poverty. Could you talk then a few minutes about what kind of economic policies India may be thinking about or working on now to sustain and increase the level of economic growth so that even more millions